Welcome back to CIA Declassified. We are standing at the threshold of 1973, a year where the Watergate scandal begins to simmer and the global energy crisis looms. Yet deep within the Directorate of Science and Technology, the focus is light years away from domestic turmoil. The agency is grappling with the Moscow Gap, the terrifying silence that occurs when an asset is buried so deep in hostile territory that a standard radio transmission is a death sentence. The dream was to launch a constellation that would effectively act as a celestial switchboard, allowing a spy in Siberian gulag to send a message as easily as a phone call. This was the era of the technological apex, where space wasn't just for prestige, but for the total domination of information. Today, we examine the ambitious, unbuilt architecture of space-based espionage. This was pure emitter. And I just want to clarify, normally I am confident of how to state the name that we're dealing with, but there are two different ways that this can be pronounced. I'm going with pure emitter, but it could also be perimeter. It's Pyramider. So again, I'm just going to pronounce it pure emitter. How did this project get its name? The designation pyramider was derived from the geometric concept of the system's footprint. In the original technical proposals submitted by TRW Systems Group, the satellite was designed to project multiple overlapping beams down to Earth. When visualized in technical schematics, these beams formed a series of four-sided pyramid-shaped zones of coverage. The name was a literalist nod to the pyramid of light that would allow a ground agent to stand in a remote location and remain connected to headquarters through a direct vertical link to the heavens. Pyramider was designed to turn every agent into a walking radio station. Project Pyramider was a covert satellite program initiated to provide high security, low probability of detection communications. A quote from a declassified 1973 feasibility study: "The system must provide the field asset with the capability to transmit bursts of data at high speeds, minimizing the window for adversary interception and localization." End quote. Technical blueprints show that Pyramider planned for a constellation of satellites in semi-synchronous orbit, ensuring constant coverage over the Soviet Union and China. The system required the development of a man-pack transceiver, a device small enough to fit in a standard briefcase but powerful enough to reach a satellite in high orbit. Documentation confirms that the agency intended to use spread spectrum technology, a method of hiding a signal by scattering it across a wide range of frequencies. A quote from a declassified internal CIA memo on cost estimates: "While the initial capital investment for the Pyramider constellation is substantial, the operational security gained by bypassing traditional long-range radio is invaluable." End quote. Records indicate that the satellites were designed with cross-link capabilities, allowing them to pass data to one another in space before beaming it down to a secure ground station. Project logs reveal that the CIA worried about space debris and Soviet killer satellites as primary threats to the architecture. Technical memos detail the use of directional antenna arrays on the ground, which would only point straight up, making it nearly impossible for ground-based police to detect the transmission. Logs show that the agency investigated self-destruct circuits for the ground units to ensure the encryption keys could never be captured by foreign intelligence. The agency estimated the cost of the ground-based pilot transceivers at roughly $5,000 per unit in 1974 dollars. TRW proposed that the satellites utilize multiple beam antennas to create a complex interference pattern that would confuse Soviet interceptors. A quote from the declassified TRW technical proposal: each beam is individually steerable, allowing the agency to focus communication resources on high-priority extraction zones in real time. End quote. The system was designed to operate in the S-band and Ku band frequencies to ensure high data throughout during short transmission bursts. CIA documents reveal that the satellites were intended to have a stealth profile with low reflectivity coatings to avoid visual detection by Soviet astronomers. The man-pack units were required to be operable by a single agent with no more than 10 minutes of specialized training. A quote from a declassified 1975 progress report: the vulnerability of the system lies not in its encryption, but in the physical discovery of the ground terminal during a sweep. End quote. Engineers developed a pressure-sensitive keypad for the units that would wipe the memory if the wrong sequence was entered under duress. The project considered launching the satellites via the space shuttle, which was then in its early development stages. Internal memos suggest the agency planned to hide the satellites' purpose by registering them as civil weather or telecommunications research platforms. The link budget calculations accounted for extreme weather conditions, ensuring signals could penetrate heavy Siberian snowstorms. The CIA tested a prototype of the man-pack antenna disguised as a common folding umbrella. A quote from a declassified technical evaluation: reliability is paramount. If a man in the field risks his life to transmit, the sky must answer. End quote. Blueprints show that the satellites were meant to have a 3-year operational lifespan before falling out of orbit and burning up. The project investigated frequency hopping patterns that changed every millisecond to stay ahead of KGB tracking. The agency collaborated with NASA engineers to solve heat dissipation issues on the satellite's high-power transmitters. Documents show the system was intended to handle both encrypted voice and high-speed teletype data. Records indicate that the footprint precision was so sharp it could target a single city block from 22,000 miles up. The system utilized parity check air connection to ensure data integrity over long distances. In 1976, the agency conducted signal bouncing tests off existing commercial satellites to simulate the pyramidal link. Technical logs confirm the use of lithium-ion predecessor batteries for the ground units to maximize field duration. The satellites were designed to be red-hardened to survive the intense radiation belts surrounding the Earth. The system planned for polar orbiting nodes to provide coverage for the Arctic regions where Soviet nuclear subs operated. Agency memos indicate the use of nickel-cadmium battery packs as a fail-safe for the satellite's primary solar arrays. The projects required zero visual signature ground cables, leading to the development of fiber optic-like camouflage for antennas. Logs show that TRW tested the system's signal-to-noise ratio in the Arizona desert to mimic high-interference urban environments. The agency budgeted for counter-jamming software that could identify and ignore Soviet noise generators in real time. Internal records confirm that the man-pack weight was strictly limited to 15 pounds to ensure agent mobility. The satellites were designed with redundant transponders so that if one were hit by a micrometeorite, the system would stay online. Documentation shows that the CIA explored using the moon as a secondary passive reflector in the case that the satellites were disabled. The declassified folders for this are a sea of white paper and black ink. The most profound redactions, the thickest, most impenetrable walls of black, occur in the section titled System Vulnerability Analysis, Soviet Countermeasures. This file actually contains the highest volume of redactions in the entire project archive, hiding the agency's true fear regarding the project's failure. If you frequent the darker, more eccentric corners of the internet, you'll find people who think those black boxes aren't hiding Soviet tech, but something from much farther away. There is a wild speculation that when the agency tested the high sensitivity receivers, they didn't just get static, they got a handshake from a non-human intelligence. The theory goes that the project was killed because we weren't just listening to spies, we were being listened to by something else. Then there are the folks who believe the pyramid of light had a darker purpose. They speculate that the beams weren't just for data, but were tuned to specific neurological frequencies. This conspiracy theory suggests the redactions hide a plan to use the satellites for global mind control, inducing a state of compliance alpha in populations within the footprint. There is also persistent speculation that the cancellation was a total fabrication. Proponents of the secret space program argue that the redacted files cover the successful covert launch of the entire constellation. They speculate that a version of the grid is currently orbiting the Earth right now, acting as a silent god that monitors every digital pulse on the planet. A newer, even more unsettling speculation has emerged from underground tectonic researchers. They theorize that the pyramid beams could be focused to resonate with the Earth's crust. This conspiracy theory suggests that it wasn't just a radio, it was a geophysical weapon capable of triggering localized earthquakes under Soviet silos, and the redactions hide the fault line target list. Was Project Parameter a success? Tactically, it was a theoretical masterpiece. It solved every major hurdle of clandestine communication on paper. Strategically, it was a budgetary failure. The project was officially canceled in the mid-70s due to soaring cost and the rapid advancement of other less expensive satellite programs. However, it was a success because it forced the development of miniaturized space-grade electronics. It successfully proved that spread spectrum communication was the future of secure data. The project successfully mapped the orbit relay doctrine that the agency uses to this day. Beyond the technical specs, the program was a success because it proved the viability of non-interceptive geometry. By shifting the transmission axis from the horizon to the zenith, the agency successfully rendered a traditional ground-based direction finding obsolete. It also successfully pioneered the concept of software-defined radio long before the term was common in the industry. The program's success is ultimately found in its children. While the name Pyrameter died in a file cabinet, its architecture was successfully absorbed into the next generation of black birds that now watch the world. Ultimately, it proved that the sky was no longer a limit, but a sanctuary for the agency's secrets. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the eye in the dark left a legacy that powers the world today, such as spread spectrum communications. The foundational tech is actually the same tech that is used right now for modern Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to function without interfering with other signals. Miniaturized satellite transceivers, the ManPack research led directly to the development of modern satellite phones used by explorers and emergency responders in the world's most remote regions. Geospatial relay algorithms, the math used to coordinate the constellation, is a direct ancestor to the software that manages modern GPS networks. And advancements in burst transmission technology. The method of sending massive amounts of data in a fraction of a second is now used in high-frequency trading and secure military communications to prevent hacking and jamming. Pyramiter reminds us that the agency's ambition is often larger than the planet itself. The Eye in the Dark was a dream of a world where no agent was ever truly alone and no secret was ever truly trapped. Though the satellites remain on the drawing board, the pyramid of light they envisioned now blankets the globe in the form of 1,000 other signals. We live in a world that Pyramiter imagined, where the stars are no longer distant lights, but silent witnesses to our every word. The invisible architecture of space has become the primary infrastructure of our lives. We are the inheritors of a project that sought to bridge the gap between a whisper on the ground and a relay in the stars. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. And remember, the sky is never truly empty. Join us next time as we examine JG Club. In the ideological furnace of post-war Asia, the agency didn't just fight with guns. They fought with ideas. We'll uncover the facts behind JG Club, the designation for the recruitment and support of student leaders in Japan to form anti-communist student unions. This wasn't just a club, it was a frontline defense for the soul of a generation. Join us next time for The Student's Shield. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.